I can actually head to the market a little earlier than before. So tell us.
It's a market in Nigeria, barter market. I want to get a 50-gallon drum, the metal drums, and I'm going to put an 18-inch fan on the top, and we're going to put holes in the right places on it. We're either going to force air down and out or up and outdoor ventilation. Maybe we'll just throw the barrel on its side or something.
Trade, so the market doesn't last long, but there are lots of people, because the market is also occupies some parts of Nigeria's border with Cameroon, and also other neighboring communities. Some come by water, so there's a lot of movement of fish, of crayfish, of vegetables, of fruits, cassava, yam, lots of farm produce. It's a majorly a farming and fishing community. So it's a little swampy towards the edge of the market, but at the top, on top of the hill, you can see all the greenery, that surrounds Cross River State, which has very large tree cover in Nigeria.
And how does the bartering actually work? Is there a science behind it so people know exactly, for instance, this much plantain or banana is equivalent of this much fish? Does it work like that?
That was a very striking thing for me. It was a striking concern, because I was like, so how do you quantify? What's the unit of measurement? And shockingly, they say it's just based on trust. One. Secondly, is your bargaining power. So somebody hands you a bunch of vegetables, for example, in exchange for 2 tubers of yam, and you say, oh no, could you make it maybe 1.5 a bunch of vegetables to equate my 2 tubers of yam? So there's really not a unit of measurement per se, but it's just based on your bargaining power and then the trust that they have amongst themselves. Because again, they say it's not interest driven. It's just for the fact that they want everybody to have something to eat. No one should go home hungry, in the words of the women.
So Nkechi, are you good in bargaining and haggling?
Oh my goodness, I am a pro. I should get a degree for it.
How many husbands
Me too. We should go to a market together.
Exactly.
You should have as many husbands
so,
as you have
Nkechi,
goats.
there is a history behind this market, and at sometimes quite a dark history. Can you tell us about it a little?
Yes, because it's majorly a fishing community. They are bordered by one of the largest coastal waters in Nigeria, southern part of the delta. And so it was a major slave route during the era of slave trade. There was the market itself actually was a venue where slaves were exchanged, were sold, and then put on boats to taken to the bigger port in Calabar Rotterdam Municipal, and then taken off to different locations in Europe and America. So they have a very dark history. A lot of
can you stop reinforcing the negative
gunpowder was also used to exchange for slaves, and then over time, of course, they now began to exchange goods for goods instead of humans after the abolition of slave trade.
You spoke to the Commissioner of Commerce for the region. What does she have to say about the role of the market in that community?
She said that it's not a market that, would generate a lot of income for the women per se, but it's just for them to have something to eat. Amongst themselves, they are very low income earners in that community. So this is a way that they help and support each other. Access to cash is very difficult because, we are experiencing very harsh economic conditions in Nigeria at the moment, and with inflation figures and all of that. So this is just a way for them to help each other because they have limited access to cash. So she said it's also a thing about culture, the fact that they still trust each other enough to bring, you bring your goods, you take what you need and you give what you have, encourages everyone also to be very hardworking, because for you to survive, you must either be a farmer or a fisherman or woman, in that community. You must have something to exchange, basically. So it's just a way of supporting them, encouraging everyone to be hardworking so that you have something to exchange at the next market day. But again, she also highlighted that the community is very underdeveloped. This trade practice should actually, encourage foreigners to come and see, get the excitement of the fact that even in the 21st century, the barter system of trade still exists.
Thank you, Nkechi Ogbonna, BBC Lagos, for that trip to that interesting market. I look forward to actually going there and haggling with you. Now, two very different stories from BBC Arabic, both part of their output for Ramadan. The radio show, BBC Extra, has been having fun with dialects and also combining food.
Hold on. What happened to the angry callers?
Yes, full disclosure, he did work for Lisa Raitt, and this week wrote a column much read in Sun Media. Back with Mark Bonikowski in Ottawa in a moment right here. I'm Charles Adler tonight.
This spring on Showcase.
My patriarchal ancestor, Lawrence Rutherford, found in our town.
I'm the creator of the good.
Okay, we've heard this commercial a bunch of times. I was preparing for
one of the oldest cities in the world, and it's called the Little Damascus because the building of its old town is similar to the old neighborhood in Damascus.
Yeah, we can do that for you here in Toronto too. You tell us what the buildings look like. We'll build them to look exactly the same, but concrete, they won't fall down.
You can't imagine it. This city,
I'm joking.
It's so beautiful and it's so old, and it is very much the nerve center of the Upper West Bank, and it's known as the uncrowned Queen of Palestine. Nablus is the capital of sweets. Like, for example, Knafe. Knafe is a Middle Eastern dessert with below top crust, sweet cheese topped with rosewater flavored syrup. It started from Nablus. Everyone call it like Nabulsi Knafe, Knafe Nabulsi. There is an old man who sells Knafe on his cart. He starts with putting the syrup, the rosewater flavored syrup on the top of Knafe, which looks so delicious and fluffy and also so hot and so fresh. And he cut it piece by piece. And then when he cut it, you see the cheese, how it looks so delicious.
All I can think is when AK-47 fire, if it's underwater.
With Basil Shantir, he is the owner of the most famous Knafe shop in the West Bank and also abroad. Like everyone knows this man. And he said that last year the situation was very difficult at the beginning of the pandemic. So the people, especially the sweet shops, they were looking forward for Ramadan because like people eat so much sweets after they break their fast.
Well, that's all your body can handle.
Majdi Arafat, he's one of the oldest sweets makers in Nablus, and he sells tamriya, which is a traditional Palestinian dessert. To be specific, it's Nablus dessert, made by flour, water, and semolina, and also the sugar syrup on it. It's a delight to your eyes and taste buds. This man, like, he's well known in Nablus. Like, even in the Palestinian territories, most of the Palestinians, they just go to Nablus to eat tamriya there, and it's so good in Ramadan. Majdi hopes the economic situation in the city will improve during the month of Ramadan. Also, it is so nice when you go in the old city of Nablus. You will see the decoration, the lights, and all the people like buying it. And it usually provides a job opportunity for many street vendors. We met one of the vendors in the old city, and he said that usually there is a big demand for buying Ramadan decoration every year.
Okay.
By appointment only. See Honda, Ontario.
These lights are signs of the Islamic religion.
I meant to keep on top of this CGTN.
Because we are all children of this planet Earth.
I'm not sure. He started making weird noises there for a second.
He responded by merely biting his lower lip.
Uh-oh.
It's a really nice meal, but Li Ne stole a look at her father.
I swore he said, I believe. These ones burned like normal? What the fuck was going on with the other one? That's my addiction. If Kevin Costner does a movie 2 years from now called The Street Sweeper, I'm going to be fucking upset. Although, I probably watched it 10,000
by J. Chow. You're listening to Studio Plus. You are listening to Studio Plus. Now let's go to our next story. A train passenger whose nose was bleeding heavily and in desperate need of treatment was lucky enough to be on the same trip as a group of 55 doctors on the D1925, a high-speed train running from Yan'an in Shanxi province to Chengdu in Sichuan province. On a recent journey, the nose of the passenger began bleeding heavily. With the situation urgent, attendants on the train anxiously looked for doctors on board. Fortunately, 55 medical workers from West China Hospital of Sichuan University were also passengers on the same train. After learning about the symptoms of the passenger from the train attendants, a temporary medical team of 5 doctors rushed to his car. Through a preliminary diagnosis, they concluded that the passenger's nosebleed was caused by a fracture of a blood vessel in the nose, induced by high blood pressure. They treated the passenger immediately and stopped the bleeding. And shortly afterwards, the blood pressure of the man was also brought under control. The man then got off the train at the next station to seek further treatment. And it was later learned the 55 medical workers were on their way back to Chengdu after finishing a training course in Yan'an, Shanxi province. So I think this guy has been really lucky because usually these spontaneous nosebleeds are very often tied to high blood pressure, as in his case. And patients with high blood pressure had a 47% increased risk for nosebleed, and their bleeding was more severe. They were 2.7 times as likely to be treated in an emergency room and more than 4 times as likely to require nasal packing, which is a procedure to stop the nose bleeding. And it is
stuff in there. We could do that.
A very serious condition.
Like what? What kind of stuff?
According to the British NHS, nosebleeds can be a sign of uncontrolled high blood pressure, and one should go straight to the accidents and emergency rooms if the nosebleed lasts longer than 10 to 15 minutes.
Wow.
I guess for this guy that we are talking about, his nose bleeding was really serious, and that's why the train attendant has been called. And I think it's lucky enough because those doctors are the professionals. They gave him timely treatment, and they also managed to bring his blood pressure under control. This just
they must be discussing different treatment plans.
Story, and it just reminds me of many similar.
And they all got 5 and 6G cell phones.
A couple of years ago, there was a report about
they were probably talking to 6 hospitals trying to decide what to do with
from the Beijing Union Hospital, which is a very famous top hospitals. One of the top hospitals in China.
Damn it.
When these doctors were playing badminton,
I remember that.
in a stadium,
these don't kill me, they're going to consume a lot of my fucking time.
Another player, not from their team, but just a random player in the stadium, collapsed onto the ground. Apparently, that guy was having a heart failure. And so these doctors immediately rushed to his rescue and performed the CPR on this guy and called the ambulance and gave him all the necessary treatment. And miraculously, they have managed to bring the man back to life. So that was a very serious condition, a heart failure. But then because they are the top doctors in those areas, so the man has been really lucky. And there are numerous such stories in China, and usually Chinese netizens would give a thumb up for these doctors and call them the beautiful.
You come to Ontario, please.
Most beautiful doctors, the most beautiful nurses and
angels.
Angels.
They are like angels. And I read about it.
Premier said
many
anybody.
of those doctors of these 55 medics, they are leading.
If I don't recognize Canada, I'm not technically lying.
Their individual hospitals. So, and they are from different departments. So basically, it's like a temporary rescue team was organized.
They could have like sliced and diced him up in the dining car and stitched them back together, right?
And in time saved this person's life. So he's definitely very
those
lucky.
high-speed
and
trains,
at the same time
they're
also
high speed,
remind
so
us
that could be like
maybe
2-3 hour
it's time
trip instead of 12 or 24 hours.
For some people to think about whether we do need medics in place on a long journey, high-speed rail, or that's another issue. But maybe later we need to think about this kind of issue.
Usually on those high-speed trains, they've got those emergency medical kits for the very basic medicines.
What do you do when everything's at like half capacity?
Say some passenger needs really professional help, then they also need to get some, motivate some of the passengers and see if there are anybody there who can do.
They hide all the good stuff between
right
the
now,
songs.
let's take a musical stop and take a musical break. And here's the singer Peter Grant with On the Beat.
I'm not waiting for the Peter Grant.
And very nerve-wracking experience to sit there watching our very best military operators tackle one of the most challenging missions.
As the Navy SEAL team arrived at bin Laden's compound aboard 2 Black Hawk helicopters, things started to go wrong almost immediately.
The idea had been that the forces would fast rope down from the helicopters that were hovering above the compound.
Instead, they just crawled
out. The helicopters would not actually land on the compound. But in the course of that part of the operation, the physical characteristics of the compound and the aerodynamics combined to bring one of those helicopters down. And so that one of those helicopters conducted what I guess you would call a controlled crash onto the compound. And it was clear very quickly that this helicopter would not be survivable and would not be able to depart the compound as had been planned. Those of us in the White House at that time, we had no control over this. We were simply observers and spectators. One of the things that struck me at the time was how even as we encountered this unexpected difficulty with the helicopter piece of the operation, you wouldn't have known by listening to Vice Admiral McCraven as he narrated on screen, you wouldn't have known that anything was amiss. This was, in a sense, I don't want to say just another day at the office, because it certainly wasn't that, but this was something that they planned, prepared, and trained for literally every day.
Despite the crash landing, the Navy SEAL team made it into the compound. Once they got inside, they killed 1 woman and 4 men.
They used the phrase Geronimo, EKIA, Geronimo, enemy killed in action. Geronimo, of course, was the code name that had been attached to bin Laden. And so when they reported that, there was an enormous sense of relief at that moment. But it was also not the end of the story, because, of course, one of the most difficult parts of the mission remained to be accomplished. And that is getting off the compound and getting out of Pakistani territory without engaging in some kind of confrontation with Pakistani security forces. So mixed feelings when we heard those words about Geronimo, EKIA. On the one hand, exultation. On the other hand, everybody was still very much holding their breath, because until that was accomplished, it couldn't be seen as a successful mission.
Even as rumors of the unexpected American presence in Abbottabad began to spread via Twitter, and despite the loss of 1 helicopter, the Navy SEAL team did make it back to their Afghanistan base. With them, the body of the man they believed to be Osama bin Laden.
In the course of the conflict on the compound, bin Laden obviously sustained some serious wounds, but his face was sufficiently clear that it could be determined through visual analysis that this was in fact bin Laden. They were able to compare how tall the individual who was killed in the operation was and compare that to what we knew to be bin Laden's height. McRaven mentioned that they had one of the people in the facility in Afghanistan where they were, one of the officers present, who was about 6'3", lie down next to the remains, and they noted that it was roughly the same height. And so that gave them confidence that it was in fact bin Laden. The president noted that it was somewhat ironic to McRaven that all of the high-tech equipment that we have that went into this raid, hundreds of millions of dollars to buy the best helicopters in the world to carry our forces to Abbottabad, and yet they lacked a simple tape measure to measure how big the actual corpse was that they had brought back from the compound. And I would say that did garner a little bit of a laugh from everybody present. And then later, when McRaven did visit President Obama in the White House, some days later, President Obama had the opportunity to present McRaven with a tape measure, so that next time the forces at JSOC would be properly equipped if they needed to measure something like that again.
Are you on fucking drugs?
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world.
None of you had a
the United States has conducted an operation to kill Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
I had been in the White House Situation Room, which sits in the basement of the West Wing of the White House, and so you really don't see anything outside. And after the president gave his remarks, I, for the first time, walked across the street back to my office, and I was absolutely shocked and stunned to see and hear that there were people out filling the streets of Washington, filling Pennsylvania Avenue near the White House, and cheering and celebrating. I must confess that I found that remarkable and surprising. I don't know why I found it surprising, given the amount of emotion, pent-up emotion, that the United States had been carrying with it in the years since 9/11.
One of them might have been 6'3", roughly the same as him.
At the same time, I don't think any of us thought that this was game over or that this was the end of the story with either Al-Qaeda or our efforts against terrorism. And of course, that has not been the case. This by no means was the end of the story. It was the closing of a chapter, but it was not the end of the book.
Nicholas Rasmussen was speaking to me, Gabriella Jones, and you've been listening to Witness History on the BBC World Service.
You're listening to KCRW's 24-hour news channel.
Oh, damn. That didn't work.
That is applied to all surfaces, including frequently touched and hard to 0.9% effective. Our Application of NanoNation's BioProtect solution coating is proven to last for up to 90 days. To have your location serviced, visit nanonationcanada.com.
I think we'll just use soap and water
over their heads and food in their bellies. The pandemic has hit us all hard, and the impact is visible on our streets. COVID-19 has left far too many people homeless, but you can help. When you donate your unwanted vehicle to Homeless Cars, you'll receive a minimum $400 tax receipt, and Homeless Cars can continue their fight against homelessness and food insecurity. Donate a car, change a life. A single donation can provide shelter for at least 10 nights or 150 bag meals. Make a difference today and go to homelesscars.ca.
We believe in a greater Toronto. This is CFMJ Global News Radio 640 Toronto. Of course, entertainment.
This is Global News. A frost advisory is in effect for Toronto.
University tuition freeze for residents by another year. Global's Rick Zambrin tells us more.
It's day one for the Canadian military helping out with COVID recovery patients at the Mobile Health Unit at Sunnybrook Hospital. Frankly, this is a fantastic mission.
The Blue Jays are smashing the Atlanta Braves and the Leafs.
To affect them, the fact of the matter is I'm a master, it's on.
Only losing day, but a big winning April in the books for
And unless you short sold it all.
business in 2020.
I'm on, this is it. He's not an issue if the battle's full effect and the status members will get you. I'm back in action, slapping these raps who want to act. As a matter of fact, it's slashing for slacking up on the set.
Says authorities were initially serving a search warrant when they entered the premises.
We had our tactical operations team, SWAT, go in and execute the search warrant. And when they got inside the house, they realized that this is actually going to turn into a human smuggling investigation.
Officials ordered COVID-19 testing of the individuals in the house after some complained of possible symptoms of the virus. U.S. regulators have approved the first high-dose nasal spray for reversing opioid overdoses.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has approved a high-dose nasal spray for reversing opioid overdoses. The Cloxidol spray from Hikma Pharmaceuticals contains 8 milligrams of naloxone, which is double the highest dose currently available. Experts and patient advocates say the benefit of the more potent reversal spray is that sometimes low-dose naloxone sprays and injections must be given multiple times to keep someone alive until medical help arrives. Naloxone is a prescription drug, but it's generally available without a prescription through public health organizations and at pharmacies across the U.S. Mike Procia, Washington.
Here's something. A couple in the Netherlands is settling in at their new 3D printed home.
Elise Lutz says her new bungalow looks like a boulder with windows.
It reminds me of something you knew when you were young, like a big stone.
The curving lines of its gray concrete walls look and feel natural. Professor Theo Soleil says 3D printing can deposit the material only where you need it.
You start printing a first layer, place a first layer of concrete, and then layer by layer, centimeter by centimeter, you go to the 3 meters height of each of these walls.
Soleil says it's all about sustainability.
To work on more sustainable concrete.
Lutz and Harry Deckers like their new home.
Feels very safe inside because it's complete silence. It looks also a little bit like a bunker.
Finishing touches, including a roof, were added. I'm Ed Donahue.
Over in some sports, Canada's Carrie Anderson dropped a 6-5 decision to Sweden's Anna Hasselborg in the round-robin opener for both teams at the World Women's Curling Championship in Calgary. Anderson says the team has to move on from the loss.
I thought we played really great. We definitely can't get down because I thought we played really well, and we had an opportunity to win, and it just slid by.
The 2020 edition of the championships was canceled just 48 hours before its scheduled start because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The 2021 games were officially a go. And over in other sports, in the NHL Northern Division, Winnipeg Friday night. No other Canadian teams on the ice. And in the NBA, the Toronto Raptors will take on Utah Jazz Saturday night. At the Global News Desk, I'm Safia Karani.
Real talk, common sense. It is scathing. The 322-page document says the system was ignored for many years and that the government didn't listen to warnings when the pandemic hit.
Ontario Government Publications.
Critical decisions came too late and that the government's emergency response system proved inadequate to protect staff and residents from COVID-19. It goes on to say poor facility design and resident overcrowding heightened sickness and death in the homes. Nearly 4,000 long-term care residents and 11 staff have died with COVID-19 since the beginning of the pandemic. You can find a link to the full report on our website, 680news.com. I'm Veronica Thor. 680 News Time, 11:05. If you live near the water, chances are you're in for a chilly night. Environment Canada has issued a frost advisory for Toronto, the GTA, and for regions across Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. Temperatures expected to hit the freezing mark overnight here in the city. Tomorrow's high will get up to 13 degrees with sun in the morning, followed by a cloudy afternoon. Your forecast coming up at 11:11.
Premier Doug Ford spoke to the province for the first time in 8 days, and there was a lot on his mind. There was lots to ask the Premier as he spoke from his late mother's backyard again, including about new documents that came to light last night showing Ford staff.
I can't believe it's been 15 years. How did I get to be so old, as Monica said? How did that happen?
Actually, I don't mind, before we get into all the political stuff that's going on, help people understand why a public relations agency is necessary. Because people hear public relations agency and they hear you, and they go, wait a minute, you're a hard ass. Warren.
I just want to see the CDTN things. I don't think the whole
make you more focused and productive at work than if you are stuck by a wall. That's according to a study. Is it true? Is it not true? We're going to discuss that. Also, boarding an airplane back to front is substantially worse at preventing the spread of COVID-19 than previous methods. That's also according to a study.
That's not the issue on the airplane. It's the recirculated air.
Coming up next is a rerun of Global Business from CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Joe Biden.
The war room concept and
what? Whoa! Everything's war, eh?
Look forward to a busy Labor Day holiday.
That was the wrong one.
Celebrate what we're here to do. Play the music. Now's the time. All of us are here tonight. Something new.
I'm not sure.
Wheels. That's what we are, and we love it. It's we're adrenaline junkies.
Look, boy.
I forgot about the bodies.
Also be used to create fake news, and because of that, jeopardize fundamentals in our democracy.
The story of AI is peppered with dilemmas. Law enforcement wants to deploy facial recognition to catch criminals. But what does that mean for our privacy?
It's difficult to imagine a technology that is more Orwellian.
Respond to your warrants.
Turn systems into walking ID cards.
This technology isn't always reliable, and it can mistake one person for another, which could lead to somebody being wrongfully arrested.
Europe's embraced robust data and privacy protection.
Like Pfizer, okay? Multi-billion-dollar company the whole world is counting on. Let's say Pfizer had a problem with a product, like maybe a vaccine, okay? What would the Daisy Group, your public relations firm, do for Pfizer that some other people who don't get their elbows
a war room?
What they won't do? What would you do that the conventional public relations groups don't do?
We tell them to get out in the window, in front of the cameras, in front of the microphones, their greatest asset of all, which is their people, they're human beings, right? These corporations get seen as just these big faceless entities. And, it was actually a pharmaceutical company
tyranny
that
and evil
taught
men.
all of us a lesson back in 1982, Johnson & Johnson, with the, the Tylenol poisonings in Chicago. You remember those, I remember those. And what they did is they put it their CEO every day. And he took responsibility for it, even though, they hadn't done the poisoning. And they withdrew the product from the marketplace. And they actually came up with a phrase. It's, persisted, tamper-proof packaging. That's what that came out of. And,
What about caution hot
put a
on
human
the coffee
being
cups, bro?
in
Tell
front
that story.
of everybody and said it wasn't just words, it was action. We take responsibility for this. We're going to help you out. We're going to change the way we do things so nobody can tamper with our stuff again. And you know what? At the end of that terrible time, 7 people were killed. At the end of that, Johnson & Johnson ended up selling more Tylenol than they ever had before because people had faith in what they were saying. That's what Pfizer, that's what all these companies should be doing.
Well, now they don't really trust the off-brands to put the proper seal on it.
A lot of people are cynical and frustrated by what they're hearing from the companies and the experts and government.
Oh, right, the vaccine fuck-up.
Well, Johnson & Johnson right now is having a problem. And are they doing right now? They're the ones with the plant in Baltimore. We've got truckloads of vaccine in this country right now from Johnson & Johnson. In Alberta, for instance, in the coming days, they were supposed to ship some of that to Port McMurray and some other places that desperately need vaccine. And this is a national show, so it's a national story. There are many people in this country who are going to get Johnson & Johnson because one of the great advantages is only one dose. You only need one dose and not 2. And it's much more portable. The freezing requirements are different. I don't want to get into a bunch of detail. But many people in this country, especially in isolated regions, were really looking forward to this. And the vaccine is now here, and Warren Kinsella, it can't be used because there are problems with possibly its compromised batch. And there's also suggestions like the AstraZeneca stuff, which I've got floating around in my system, that that may cause blood clotting as well. So, in a circumstance like this where lives are literally on the line, it's not enough just to trust government to get out there and get your message out there, because governments on the right and left across Canada, across the United States, across Europe, they, increasingly are distrusted by people.
Oh,
it's not these libertarian politicians on the right alone. There are people on the progressive left who are becoming increasingly cynical. So it's really important that these companies get out there and talk about the product and say, here's what we did to make it safe for you, and we tested it on ourselves, and we tested it on our own, families and all that stuff.
Most of them didn't die.
Because people want to hear that. Really, I was talking to a doctor today at Mount Sinai here in Toronto, and I said, what should we be doing? What should governments be doing? And he said, well, who's the person you trust in a medical situation most of all? And I said, well, your family doctor. He said, exactly. People need to be communicated with and taught and spoken to like they're meeting with their family doctor, somebody they trust, somebody who listens to them, somebody who cares about them. That empathy, that's what's needed right now. Because right now, people are only seeing the statistics from these faceless companies and these, big monoliths of government, and they just don't believe it as much as they used to. They just don't.
So when people are feeling insecure about a product like Canada at the beginnings of a pandemic, and the Prime Minister of Canada, that face that you talk about, right, the boss, when he comes out of his cottage, his hutch, whatever you want to call it, when he gets in front of that fancy door that seems to do so well in focus groups, the Canadians love that door. He comes out of that door and then does whatever he does, regardless of how much you want to criticize it. I mean, I've talked about, the theatrical empathy and all of that. Put aside how we feel about some of what he says and how he says it. The fact that he's coming out the door every day at the same time and doing what he did, do you think that politically, especially if he ends up with a majority, do you think that when political scientists write about the Trudeau days, do you think they'll say, Trudeau did exactly what Warren Kinsella tells companies to do, he did it right?
He did it. He did the Johnson & Johnson stuff. He put a human face on a complicated and emotional story. Where he diverged from them is it's not enough just to have words. You're in the words business and so am I. But you got to show people, right? They're from Missouri. They want to see action. And the problem he's got is, for example, in the airports across the country that are still accepting international flights, there's still people coming into the country, who got COVID. And so his words, his rhetoric don't match his action. And that's where he's different from Johnson & Johnson. But there's no question, he's doing well. And I compared to O'Toole, who's been a disaster. And I think the main reason he's doing well is people don't like changing a horse in the middle of the river, right? In the middle of the stream. When you're in the middle of a crisis like this one, you don't want to roll the dice yet again. So I think that's why they're sticking with him. You know, if we weren't in a pandemic, maybe he'd be in bigger trouble.
I had the conservative columnist Mark Bonakarski, who you know very well. You've known him for decades, and had him on about 15 minutes ago, and I asked him, and he's a conservative. He wanted to run for the Conservatives. I'm not going to get into all of that again, but here's the deal. I asked him the straight-up question: how are the Conservatives doing right now, nationally? How competitive are they nationally? And you know, Bono, he doesn't care how anyone feels about what he says. He shoots right from the hip. He said, Chuck, the Conservatives are circling the bowl.
Yeah, they are. And he broke a story about an extraordinary event this week. Lisa Ray, former deputy leader of the Conservative Party, the face of the Conservative Party, really the progressive element, the leader of the progressive faction within the Conservative Party in Canada. Not only was she defeated in the last federal election, but this week, as Bono reported, she got kicked off of the executive in her own riding in Milton. And at that point, you know, I can't use the language I used on Twitter, but let's put it this way. When I saw that, I said, these guys are done. They're just done like dinner. Yeah. They lose. They kick out somebody like Lisa Ray. They deserve to lose, and they're going to lose.
Well, I saw it, and I just said to myself, it's a room service election again for Justin Trudeau. I mean, this is the kind of thing he and his crew, his war room, whether Warren Kinsella is head of it or not these days, his war room looks at that and they go, this is steak. I mean, this is a really juicy steak. The Conservatives, the enemy is doing it to itself. But the old expression about it, when the enemy's burning his house down, just watch it burn. And that seems to be what they're doing right now. We're going to switch focus dramatically in just a few moments. To what? I don't know to what, because these are spontaneous, unrehearsed conversations with Kinsella every Friday. We'll continue in a moment right here on Charles Adler Tonight.
Everyday Canadians are buying homes and getting the wrong mortgage rates. Important announcement. If you have a home mortgage closing in the next 90 days, 1.15% 5-year variable.
Oh, that got a little dry. I thought there'd be more to it.
Regulation, well-designed, well-crafted regulation is actually a critical enabler for us. And also gives people who build these types of applications some kind of clarity around what is expected of them. And I think that does entail some degree of transparency and rigor about.
Subject to 1,000 to 10,000 yuan fine.
Yeah. Fully support this kind of regulation, and I think probably in the near future we will see this kind of regulation go to some other cities, including Beijing, probably.
Yes, and for people who are riding such e-bikes, there will be some other things that they need to pay attention to. For example, for those motor vehicle, motor vehicle drivers, they pay attention to all those regulations, the traffic regulations. For example, if there's a zebra crossing, they have to stop and let the pedestrians walk through fast if there's the green light for the pedestrians. So it's the same thing for those non-motor vehicle drivers and riders.
We're talking about Beijing, right? Are you fucking serious?
And there shouldn't be blasting of horns.
They advise foreigners, not like tourists, not to drive when you're in China.
Some of the e-bikes do have horns, and say if they blasted their horns for a long time, they're going to be, punished in a certain way. And if they want to make a turn, they have to make a turn. If not, then they could be subject to a certain warning or fine, and they definitely cannot use smartphones to make phone calls while riding.
Yes.
And there are some others too.
Because drivers would never do that.
You cannot ride on the wrong on the wrong lane, strictly forbidden. And also there are
they'll go right in between the cars.
Regulations. And according to the city, they are
the big thing in 2019 was to legalize lane filtering.
Compile a planning and design guideline for slow traffic across the whole city of Shanghai, and authorities from the Shanghai Municipal Transport Commission said they aim to improve the connectivity of a systematic non-motor vehicle network, and they are also cooperating with the traffic police to give more road using priority to non-motor vehicles. I think this is a good thing because these e-bikes and bicycles in general, is a way of a green transportation.
Yeah.
So if such facilities is good and if it is safe,
what is it exactly they're debating on here?
It's going to encourage more people to use this kind of green transportation mode for their daily commuting, and it's going to reduce emission. I guess that's exactly the reason why Shanghai is implementing the latest rules.
Indeed. All right. On that note, let's go to a song break, and here is Bee Gees, "Staying Alive." Stay tuned.
No, they've actually somebody.
This is Charles Adler tonight. Once again, here is Charles Adler.
So somebody came up with a CPR routine to do to the beat of this song. So I'm gonna put it back on. No, I am. I'm putting it back on. I just had to say that because I've got the CPR, but I've got, let's see, first aid, safety oriented, and then Canadian Red Cross first aid and CPR. They're right there. I know it's not too useful, but to have them right there and not read them. But no, I'm serious. Somebody, you're supposed to do CPR to this beat. This is official military work right now. G.I. Joe Danger Pit.
nowhere. Somebody help Somebody help me. Somebody help me. I'm going nowhere. Somebody help me.
From the African savannah to the ancient silk.
There's many others like Rose Persuasion who have.
In Toronto, the paramedics listen to the Bee Gees, and the morgue technicians listen to heavy metal. I think the cops listen to rap music to figure out what we get up to. I'm not sure. Don't confess in a rap song is a bad idea.
You would be in danger of losing government at that point.
Warren Kinsella, I've got about 30 seconds left. Are you writing any columns for this weekend?
I am indeed. We didn't miss much. Trying to encourage people to get vaccinated. Don't be afraid. But also reach out to each other. I think we've reached that point where people are frustrated, they're angry, they're cynical. It's time we all give each other some support because this thing is a grind, and we can't forget that we're all in this together.
Give your mom, the artist, a shout out before you go. I promised her you would.
Hello, Mom. 15th anniversary of the Daisy Group. Couldn't have done it without you.
And clients say, why the Daisy Group? Next time he's on, I'll try to torture him a little bit and convince him to tell us why he calls the Daisy Group the Daisy Group. Warren, you're the best. Thank you very much.
Thanks, my friend. Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend, and have a wonderful weekend, Mom. Warren's mom.
Hey, how has business for you changed in the last year? Even though
Bastard, I don't know what that instrumental was. I wonder if the podcast version of his show has the commercials in it or the musical bumpers. These people here are going to hide 4 minutes of useful information in 4. CRI will hide 4 minutes of useful information, incredibly useful information, in 4 hours of either Western music or Western style Chinese music.
Because it's already difficult to know that a tool is biased against, or that you're being discriminated against. This is exactly the kind of transparency we're asking for, and which does not exist, because it's true that we have anti-discrimination laws, but they are personal, so I have to prove I have been personally discriminated against. And that's already difficult today, and it's almost impossible against an AI tool. I mean,
I know where to go, I'm a sensible cat. Sing a song and slice a bonus, it's a piece of my set. Set the trap, cause I'm a savage, you the salmon I catch. 100 dead MCs and the thread in my neck. The smell of death in my direction is starting to affect them. The fact of the matter is, I'm a master, it's automatic. The audiomatic addict is addict, cause I just met it with those who say the damage. I don't condone the don't control and manage the flows to cause a panic, so step back. If your head is shaking, don't come back. I snap heads back till they crook up from right hooks, and right hooks of demons. Oh, I need you to leave shook. Never see a person scalped in the daylight. Imagine how we act in the middle of the night. A bunch of savages running through your city like a pack of rabid dogs. I'ma unleash the pities, pissing on your property, marking our territory. After it gets dark is when it starts to get gory. Murdering MC's dreams on the beats, getting murdered on the microphone is worse to me. Spitting a high caliber, written's above average. My lyrics are like algebra, getting that mathematics. Putting the clip in the automatic pistol whip, I'm strong static. I ain't never taking a break it all, cause I ain't asthmatic. I was rolling up a pile of grass. You can ask Patrick, hope you got a doobie with some hash in your passing it. Take a couple of dabs and I'm passionate, smashing it. Best ass up tap since the last visit.
Check this recital, yes, I'm vital, never idle. We don't acquiesce and carry stress or harbor rivalry. Been grinding full strength, so we let it hear a burner be. My destiny conspires and continues to inspire me. My eyes and my mind remain open. It's like a black hole to the soul, and no, I'm not joking. It's real. I maintain and incorporate how I feel, where I'm from, why I'm ill. Castle, Mountain Castle, hell in that whole area. It was the killer, man, my brother's on a barrier. It's getting scarier, I mean it's scarier. It was on the barrier, build it up, 47 feet up in the area. Cause I'm coming through, and my beat is damager. Real game, about to fuck you up with spoken word. It's dum-dums taking over in the common world. But here we are, gonna rise up and be the conquerors.
306 and the 604. Had to hit the YBR for that sushi raw. Ooh, let me tell them just who we are. Nowadays we got made to be movie stars. Do be lit, bumping funk dubious. The Tahiti treat, spilling on my coochie fit. True MC, I don't care how cool you is. If you grip that mic, you better do that shit. Got the licks like, damn, who that kid? That's when I take time to tell them who I is. It's the DR, no knock from ER. Out in YYC where they all fucking yeehaw. But me, yo, shit, came straight from the past. Rose from the earth with a face full of ash. Old man eagle sees snakes in the grass. Swoop down, claws to the face of the man.
When I hit it, I split it, get it right up against faded fitteds. I'm deadly past the limit, you turkey feathers or gimmicks. Play school rhymes and some lyrics. I like totemic expression, sacred mathematic geometry, all in a freestyle session. Or like Vindeloria, I've been a Windelorian. Microdosing vines of euphoria and midichlorians. I'm like Billy Jack the Ripper with the chili knack for rapping. I'm like really stacked for victory. I don't even know what happened. It's like Thunderbird, Featherstaff, Buffalo Skull, Pictograph, Sasquatch, Octopus, shaped into a bitch smash. Indigo Whisperer, Columbus, the Christopher, World Club swinging, sinister Pendleton, Dick Prime Minister from time immemorial to my own memorial. I write my own editorial, Borealis in my cornea, yo. I don't care how freaking corny you go. You can never really be more anti-colonial, yo. Timing is everything when it comes to our safer spaces. Jeopardize my positions of power, sleeping seeds, waiting for perfect conditions to flower. We are almost there. We're in the fight.
That was for you. That was for the grape. Oh, what has just occurred? Well, this is not useful.
Dying and resident overcrowding heightened sickness and death in nursing homes, with nearly 4,000 residents and 11 staff dying of COVID-19 by the end of April. South of the border, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper has granted who had been imprisoned for 2 decades before his 2 murder convictions were vacated more than 4 years ago by a judge. Daryl Anthony Howard can now apply to the commission for compensation of up to $750,000 for wrongful conviction. Howard was convicted in Durham County Court in 1995 for the 91 deaths of Doris Washington and her daughter, Nashonda. DNA testing of sexual assault kits ultimately led to his release in August of 2016. Fur could be flying at the White House. The Bidens are bringing another of their pets to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The cat will join the Bidens' 2 German Shepherds. Okay. At the Global News Desk, I'm Safia Pirani.
This is Charles Adler Tonight. Once again, here is Charles Adler.
So Dr. Sajid Faisal is a public health researcher for the University of Calgary, and we just don't have him on enough because he takes the pandemic story and the vaccine story to places that most people don't. And today, he was extremely creative. As a matter of fact, I want to ask him in just a few moments who the team is that he's working on this. This is on social media. You can find it on my Twitter timeline. And I'll retweet it right here, so it'll be very, very close to the top. He started a thread about 99 reasons why you should get the COVID-19 vaccine. It is extremely well done. And once again, if you have access to Twitter, maybe there's some other ways to get it. I'll ask him in a moment. I want you to get this and pass it on to everybody on your list, because it's just absolutely excellent. And in a moment, once again, I'll ask him who the team is, because I want to give all of them credit here. Dr. Frizzell, first of all, welcome back to the program. Make you sick and kill you. You're trying to interrupt this shit, man. Fuck up. Who worked on 99 reasons why you should get the COVID-19 vaccine? Who worked on this with you?
I actually thought of it earlier this week, it came to me when, you normally read these blog posts or listicles that have 99 reasons you should do this and that. And I was just thinking, we have a lot of public health messaging talking about how the side effects are minor and treatable, how effective it is. But there's a whole different aspect of the vaccine and public health messaging that maybe doesn't get as much attention, and that is once 70 to 80% of the population is vaccinated, we will actually be returning back to a normal life pre-pandemic. So I think we have to make it clear that the equation is vaccination equals normal life. And so I just thought we can all use some motivation thinking about how we can get back to normalcy once we get vaccinated. So I bounced this idea off with my wife, and then I was also in chat with a science communicator called Sarah Mojarrad, who is on Twitter as well. And yeah, we thought let's do this.
So your wife and one other person, that's it? That's the team here?
Yeah.
Who's the other person? Wow. Is it your mother-in-law?
That is really efficient. Folks, when you take a look at this, 99 reasons why you should get the COVID-19 vaccine, the visuals are exciting, and every aspect of this makes so much sense. Dr. Frazel, give us your own, I can't do 99 here, but yeah, let's just take your top 5. What are your most important reasons, your 5 most important reasons why we should get the vaccine? Of course, all of this dovetails with the idea of normalcy. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, the first one is to see family and friends. I had to meet my brother in early 2020, but I couldn't. So I haven't seen him for over 5 years. He's in India. So that's one of the reasons. I would like to travel the world. That's another reason. I'd like to go back to the mosque. A lot of people haven't been able to go to faith-based institutions because of the pandemic and congregate. I like swimming. I want to go back to a water park. So there's so many of these fun reasons that people have where they can meet family and friends, have a barbecue with relatives at the back of the porch. And so there's so many other reasons to get back to normal life where if we all get vaccinated, all that can be possible sooner. And so I think this is something that I'm trying to promote. There is this whole sort of emotional and fun aspect to the messaging. And I think this is what we need right now, to motivate each other and say, hey, let's get this vaccine. Let's get back to normal.
Dr. Frazel, I want to keep this as light as possible with the reasons for getting the vaccine in normal life, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say, wait a minute. Frazel says he wants to go to India to visit with his brother. Well, God love you and your brother, but India, do you really think that you'd be going to India anytime soon?
You see, the situation is very bad there right now, and it's very sad to see how things have turned out because of lack of leadership in the country. Politicians holding rallies during a pandemic, which has partly contributed to this massive outbreak, which is really heartbreaking. But at the end of the day, I think once we reach the end of this year, at least in Canada, when we have 70 to 80% of the people vaccinated, we will be able to travel. When it comes to India, I'm not sure if it's going to be as early as the end of this year. It might be even later, maybe mid next year. It is one of the largest manufacturers of the vaccine in the world right now, of the COVID vaccine. So once they get their rollout back on track and manage to vaccinate as many people as possible, which is again a mammoth task for a country like that with a large population. But yeah, you'd be able to have travel opening up when we reach that stage, which is probably not anytime soon.
So we've got a significant chunk of this audience naturally that has roots in India, families in India. They're very, very concerned. In your particular case, is it a hot spot? Is it an area of concern for the Frazel family?
It is. I mean, my brother is there right now, and he's actually there because he's studying dentistry. So he's right on the not necessarily on the front lines of COVID, but still works in a healthcare facility in a hospital setting, and I am quite concerned about his safety. The positive side is that at least the healthcare workers over there are doing their best to manage the situation. They have a strong sense of solidarity. They are not giving up. They are saying, nope, we're going to do this. We're going to save our country. And I think that's what's needed anywhere in the world. Similarly, here in Canada, I want to shout out to this initiative that was happening this past week. This is our shot, which is an initiative of motivating Canadians to get the vaccine. You have people all the way from Chris Hadfield to Ryan Reynolds participating, and everyone else in between. And I think it's great. We need this sense of community of saying we're going to beat this virus, we're going to get back to normal. One of the things to do about it is to make sure you get the vaccine as soon as you can.
Dr. Faisal, that brings me to the issue that everybody's talking about.
This could happen.
This business of getting the vaccine as soon as you can. Something we're going to be doing on the air in 20 minutes. We did a little bit of it earlier in the program. We've got a number of people participating in vaccine tourism right now. That's the nice word for it. Really what it is they want to get the vaccine as soon as they can. And that is going to the United States. I'm not going to dwell too much on what you think of vaccine tourism. I don't want to spend time on that here. I'll do that in about 20 minutes. But it's all about getting the vaccine within 21 or 28 days if you're taking the mRNA vaccine, which most people are getting. What's your take on the safety of the vaccine if the second dose isn't within 21 or 28 days? Because in Canada, we don't have enough inventory to do that. What's your take on the safety if we have to wait for 2 or 3 months for that second dose?
Yeah, you see, when it comes to the safety of the vaccine, it remains the same, whether you get the one shot or both the doses. What we need to talk about here is the effectiveness of the vaccine. And now we know if you take both the vaccines at least around 28 days apart, again, depending on the manufacturer, you are able to get and reach that 95% effectiveness. One shot can give you between 50 to 70% effectiveness, depending on the manufacturer or which shot you get. I don't want to go down into the nitty-gritty, but so we talk about the effectiveness. I think at the end of the day, there are some trials going on to see what the effectiveness will be if it's the second shot is taken more than 28 days. It might be a little less, I'm assuming, but I think it's a little early for me to say until I review some more data on that.
If you had your druthers, and this is just the most straight up, honest question we can ask about this. If you had your druthers and inventory was not an issue, would you be on our air saying, folks, make sure you get that second dose within 28 days?
Oh, you mean if there was no inventory issue?
If there was no inventory situation, if we had more inventory than God, if we had as much inventory as we needed, inventory was not an issue.
Hey, God gave you the virus, but you're not listening.
Okay.
Absolutely. We would say that get the second dose within 28 days. There is no question about it. The manufacturers have been very clear from the beginning, and the studies that were conducted in the clinical trial did show that after 28 days, for some of the manufacturers, 20 to 30 days, when you get the second shot, the effectiveness is 95%. Now, the danger of prolonging the time between the first and the second dose is how much of that effectiveness can you get at the end. And maybe you will be able to get around 90% effectiveness, but maybe it'll take a little longer. So we do know that you reach 95% effectiveness 14 days after your second dose. So maybe that time duration of reaching that much effectiveness might be a little longer if we stretch out the time in between the two doses.
So what we're going to do here is give people an opportunity to come online with you if they've got any questions about
all your characters
vaccine,
have different health levels.
We've got Dr. Faisal at your disposal at 1-877-399-9898. He is a public health researcher. Dr. Sajid Faisal is with you.
To give the power
1-877-399-9898. If you're texting us, please leave us your location,
pay some weird
okay,
medicine
and your
person
first
to
name.
heal my
Really
characters.
would appreciate that. Charles Adler with Dr. Sajid Faisal, and in about 20 minutes from now, we'll open up the lines on what we're calling vaccine tourism, people going to the United States to get those 2 shots as soon as possible. This is Charles Adler tonight.
While the road to a successful and happy retirement may seem confusing, a little help can make the journey a lot smoother.
I think it's hard to say, like, back in the electricity superpower. Electricity was still in the very early stages, and it took decades to take hold across the entire economy. So I think we're still very much in the early innings. And
that's only because they
not
threw diesel off a boat.
about who leads in some of the initial applications, but it's about who's able to diffuse and spread AI across all sectors of the economy. And maybe the EU's regulation will help the EU firms, EU countries to diffuse AI technology.
Diffuse? Diffuse or defuse?
I
don't know what that is, but I can't handle it. There's something good coming up after that. I guarantee there's some tidbit of information.
Worlds.
要讲的是电视剧《三生三世十里桃花》的主题曲。
Blazing the Trail has become a hit song for many listeners, which is about an epic and twisted love story between 2 deities that lasted for 3 lives. In this piece, listeners are able to explore this extraordinary romance while reminiscing on their own. I used the 1st and the 4th string of the pipa to create a
collected from surveillance cameras with these facial recognition companies, and then leveraging their interfaces to...
Selling happens on a phone call.
Have you ever thought about owning physical gold or silver and been told it's a bad idea? Thank goodness for Guildhall. Guildhall Precious Metals will put you first. With Guildhall, you can discover how owning physical gold could protect your financial future and cost your pocket less. Go to guildhallwealth.com, where it's all about you.
Sorry, Stephen. I want to do things my way. I'm heading to Guildhall.
Guildhall is gold.
You've been listening to us on the AM dial for decades.
But we know if Toronto get in the way. Stop cursing the streetcar wires. Download the Radio Player Canada app.
So the 2 big revelations yesterday.
That's how we should sound all the time.
Once you have the Radio Player Canada app on your phone, you can use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto to listen on the 401, the QEW, or wherever your commute takes you. The city's biggest interviews and the news that matters to you. We are 640 Toronto.
When you lease a 2021 Honda CR-V, you're saying yes to Ontario because our assembly line is in Ontario. During the Honda Checkered Flag event, lease the 2021 CR-V LX from $82 weekly at 2.99% and 0 down, including the $750 Honda bonus. And after you get your CR-V, show some more local love. Order in from your favorite restaurant. Includes freight and fees for 60 months, taxes extra OAC. Made with domestic and imported parts. By appointment only. See HondaOntario.com.
So this is happening 30 times.
At Reliance Home Comfort, we're more than just heating and cooling. We can help with everything from urgent plumbing needs to lingering issues like a leaky faucet you may have been putting off. Our customers are our priority. It's how Reliance has earned over 50,000 5-star reviews, and why we always take precautions to ensure your safety. Plus, right now, Reliance Home Comfort is offering...
Is it possible within a liberal democracy to achieve what China has done? In a sense, is our concern that China might actually be able to lead and dominate research because it's relatively unfettered?
Made the extra thin crust pizza. You get the same authentic Italian taste as our regular pizza, but with 2/3 less carbs. Because the last thing Raul wants is an inflatable waist.
Pizzaville, stone-baked pizza. Fiercely Canadian, authentically Italian.
Welcome to Cooking Naked. I'm your host, Brenda Stewart, and I'm completely nude right now in my kitchen. I don't usually cook bacon naked, but today I'm cooking with gluten with over 85%. Less fat than regular side bacon, it's safe to cook naked. Oh, hey Dave. I didn't think you'd be home so soon.
Oh, hey Brenda, but that's bacon.
Lou's Kitchen, babe. It's the bacon you can cook naked.
Really? Who knew?
Lou's Kitchen double smoked back bacon. Find it today at Sobeys, Loblaws, Walmart, and Metro. Compared to national brand 54-gram regular side bacon.
Well, that's helpful to us over here.
This is Charles Adler Tonight. Once again, here is Charles Adler.
He's a health researcher at Alberta Health Services, Dr. Sajid Fazl, F-A-Z-E-L, or for our American friends, F-A-Z-E-L. And we're talking about vaccines and COVID-19, and I want to get